Welcome back, dudes. Hopefully the bathroom, the cookies, the tea was all great. How's everyone doing?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm not used to talking that much, so I definitely needed some hydrating.
Parched throat.
Parched, yeah.
Joey, how's this editing stuff going?
Editing stuff is going great. Everything sounds wonderful.
It's so funny when that little stupid red dot goes up on the left corner of the screen. I just feel like I gotta start acting weird. Oh, like my back gets straighter and I have to do things.
He turns on his radio voice.
Everyone, welcome to my podcast. Anyway. Well, here we are. We're back. It is part 2 of our podcast with Douglas. And we had some really interesting things come up. Some stuff about sex. So that's always interesting.
I thought you might go there.
And I was just texting the guys beforehand, a little bit of a context, some behind the scenes. You're lucky. Soon I'll make everyone pay for the Patreon subscription to get the real behind the scenes footage. But my hope is that this second part is where we get to do some back and forth. And I had texted the guys like, hey, is there anything controversial that we could talk about? And we're all just kind of nice guys. So no one's angry right now, which is nice. But the hope is that we can find an idea of passion or something that we can just kind of go back and forth about. Joey made a nice distinction that there's a difference between heated and passion. Passion is happy emotion. Heated makes it into an argument.
Yeah, so in my mind, if you go heated in something, you want to have maybe a big argument. And in my mind, when it gets heated, you also get into a negative zone. And once you become passionate, you can just really talk lovely about a certain topic, but also listen to the other person because you want to expand the knowledge on that topic.
I like that.
Yeah, because I think ultimately my hope for this podcast is that ideas are heard. So we got to hear like Douglas's story, and but then ideas are also challenged as well. Mm-hmm. And I feel like so often in our world, maybe just like people's story is like, well, there's not always room for challenging. Like, well, did you really, experience it that way, or is that how you should have interpreted events, or that kind of thing?
So I'm gonna make this easy for you guys.
Thanks. Go for it. I'll be over
here.
Yeah,
you just want to go. No, but initially when we stopped, we asked each other like, do you have questions? And both of you jumped in that you wanted to ask me questions. So I just want to start off with just shoot me some questions. Let's see where we go.
All right, Joey, open season. So Joey, I'm curious what you thought about some of the just like baptism. Like, have you ever experienced what like baptism is, or know anything like what that looks like?
I definitely know a lot about baptism because for some reason I always end up reading stuff about religion. Don't ask why. But I never experienced it. I'm not baptized myself, never been to a baptism. And I've heard that grown-ups do it, but I did not know that they do that in the Netherlands as well. Like a grown-up baptism. So that was really fascinating to hear that. And would I be open to see a baptism? Who knows?
That's good to know. Douglas, what do you think is the significance of baptism? Why do people still do it? Why is it a big deal?
That's a good question, because I feel like there's so many. Like ask any Christian what the distinction was of them coming to faith, and it will be a different moment. And for me, for example, it was that cliche moment where I was riding my bicycle. It was the moment where I felt like God was asking me to make an obvious choice and active surrender for one thing over the other. But then I think baptism is still like it's kind of like a proclamation of like making it official to everybody. Like, hey, this is I've experienced this change in my life that God has invited me into, and I'm celebrating that today. From here on in, like the part of me that was living apart from God before is now a part of the past, and now I'm living in the now, the here and now, and I want to celebrate that and make that official. Basically, I think it's. I think the idea of baptism, even the word, like it kind of can maybe not. I don't know. I still, for example, have like a negative connotation when I hear the word religion. I think of rules and judgment and punishment and all of those words. So as soon as someone like labels me as religious, I have like
Don't want that.
I don't like that. I have an allergy to that. But that, to me, there's a difference between faith and religion. And so I think even baptism, it's not a negative word, but it has this, from my experience at least, it had this weightedness of like, oh, it was kind of like that additional commitment after having decided to go to church, after having decided to do the Alpha course. It's like, oh, another commitment. Do I really want to well, I mean, I did. It took me time though. I didn't make all of these decisions within the space of a week. I mean, I first stepped into a church again in 2013 and I got baptized in 2016. So
I think that's one of my favorite things about your story is that it wasn't just instantaneous, like, all these people really love me and I want to fit in, so I'm going to do all the things they asked me to do. Like, you had a series of yeses, but they really were parsed and a lot of time to really think through, is this what I want to do? And am I just doing it to fit in? But like, and then baptism for sure. I love that you described it as like, it's an act of surrender. So Joey, yeah, like there is different groups or different denominations basically within Christianity that do it differently, and more Catholic side of things, they do baby baptism. So like baby's born and they'll kind of like baptize them into the Christian faith. But then the Protestant side, which is like Martin Luther, he reformed the church, all that stuff, is more like as an adult, you have to make that decision for yourself. And that's when you do immersion. So you're going full dunk down and they bring you back out of the water. And
I've seen some videos from that.
Some gifs just down.
That it's a I think it's a Russian church that does this, and they have this really weird looking baby.
Oh, yikes.
No, but they dunk him, but they also dubbed over him. So it's literally like, where's the money, Bashinsky? Tell us where the money is. And the baby is up the water, and there's this really shocked face. And they voice the baby like, wait, I'm sure it's there. Let me look again. And they dunk the baby again for the baptism. It's a really funny video.
That sounds hilarious and horrible all at the same time. Yeah. I mean, so that I'm also on the side of things that just because I agree with you, Douglas. Like you mentioned this in your talk, but this difference between faith and religion. Joey, I don't know if you've ever kind of like heard those two distinctions, but this is starting to be talked a lot more about in Christianity. Religion being rules, kind of like what Douglas said, and rituals, which are not necessarily bad things, but they can become stair steps to get to God. Oh, you do these things, then you'll become holy. Versus what the Bible actually teaches is faith. It's like a personal relationship, that your stance with God is a matter of your heart, not you doing all these things. And so, yeah, that's why I really, like, I honestly really love baptism. I think it's really beautiful. One, because it's like abnormal. It's not something that you would just do. It's not something you would just happen upon. It's like this, you are deciding as a grown man to let other grown men in a tub in front of like hundreds of people push you down in the water and bring you back up. Or I've done it in well, yeah, actually it was like, yeah, an outdoor service. And so it's not normal and it's pretty momentous. Like there's just like a momentousness to it. And but surrender is really what it symbolizes for me. It's like Douglas said, it's like who I was when I was in control of my own life, when I was calling my own shots, that goes down in the water and I leave it there and I come back fully submitted. Doesn't mean you're fully perfect, but it's fully submitted. It's like now God's my authority. Jesus is my my all, everything.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I am naturally a rebel that goes against the stream. So that's definitely something I would probably not be fine with from my perspective.
And there's a reason it is later in the process. Like there's a reason that Douglas had a whole bunch of, like, no one fronted with like, hey, we're really excited that you're looking into Christianity. Next week, we're going to do some baptism. So you want to come and do it? And he's just like, nope, don't think so. No, it was like, it was through conversations and friendships and yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Unless Douglas, that is how it happens.
No. That would not have sold it to me.
just walked into church and they were doing some, and you were like, "Yeah, dunk me in. I'm ready."
That's the kind of brainwashing I was afraid of.
No, don't put me in the tub. No. No, actually, it's quite beautiful. I've gotten to baptize some of the guys that I got to meet up with in the U.S. in Oregon. Shout out to Matt. Hopefully, you're listening to this. But it was like one of the most beautiful things I've ever taken part in, because here's this guy. He's probably 20 or something when this happened, maybe 21, middle of his university career time, and we had been meeting up almost on a weekly basis for about 2 years now, and reading the Bible together and chatting, like, what do you think this means? And his questions, my questions, and Matt specifically, he grew up in some sort of Christian home, but really, he's really smart, and so he was trying to wrestle with, like, how do I put together faith and reason, and can they go together? And learning all these things about science and evolution, and like, does this mean I have to give up faith? And so basically I told him, like, Matt, there's probably never going to be a point where you're 100% sure that God exists. There's a reason it's supernatural, like it's above the natural world. So that's why it's in the realm of faith. Like, but that doesn't mean it's blind faith. And so I talked about this analogy of, like, I don't know, a thermometer or something, and it has the like red stuff and then also, I don't know, oil or something. And basically I told him, when you're a kid, you operate a lot of your life off of faith. The whole world around you is new. And so you're just taking in what people tell you it is. They're like, that is a monkey. And you're like, all right, like, that nice lady that's my mom, she said it was a monkey, so it must be a monkey. And like, monkey says this, and you should eat this, it's good for you. And so and of course you rebel, but ultimately you're believing as they convince you. But then you build up experiences along the way that start to cement what it is that you think is true. And so you'll never get rid of the faith color in that bottle, but over time you can build up your experience substance. There's like 2 chemicals or something in there, experience and faith. So you will always, so I was telling him, like, you're always going to have that moment of, I need to believe this by faith, but it can still be built off of an entire foundation of, these are the things I've looked into, I've asked questions about, I've heard other people's answers on, I've experienced myself. And so faith doesn't have to be a scary thing. It can actually be a well thought through reason thing, but you're always going to have that moment of faith. Faith will never be extinct from the equation, which is true about anything in life. Even with gravity, we have a whole lot of, like, the good red reason substance about gravity existing. Smart people have talked about it. Like, we've been believing it for hundreds of years now, maybe not even 100.
Wait, are you going to tell me we're not sure that gravity exists?
Well, so we are confident, but we're never going to be 100% sure. So it's like the confidence to sureness. No one can prove 100% that this is real, but they have all these, that, like, the fact that it never cuts out on us. There's never a day where gravity's just like, we're done. You're like, oh crap, what? I'm floating. It's the same principle. We just don't know that we're operating off of a sense of faith. But every time you take a step, you're operating under the confidence that gravity is what people have said it is, and so you don't take it for granted. And so that's similar to my Christian walk. Like every day that I live it out or talk about it with other people, it starts to build my confidence in, this is how I want to live. This is what I want to live by.
So I'm at this point very interested in what Douglas wanted to ask me. Because you've been holding on for this to this question for a solid 30 minutes. And I'm like, let's jump into this.
I'm now thinking about gravity.
Sorry. Derailed us.
I'm completely lost now. But I think one of my questions was like, I had a bunch actually that came to mind. But how is it for you, Joey, as someone who would consider themselves not someone of faith, to hear someone speak into like kind of the level of importance that sexuality has in their life, like in terms of I shared a little bit about how I had this realization that it didn't have as much of a stronghold on me as I felt like it did, or it was projected to have. How for yourself as someone who's not of faith, how do you receive that? How do you I'm curious. You're as I think I called you, you're the most humble non-believer I've ever shared my story with, in the sense that I didn't hear a negative. I mean, I'm lucky to have never experienced that much of a negative pushback when I shared my story, but I mean, it's possible. I think that's one of the things that makes being vulnerable so scary, but can also be so beautiful, is that you experience connection when you share the deepest, hardest part of yourself. So I'm just curious for you what it kind of brought up.
Well, and that's what I liked about your story, is because you did really just tell a very personal story to someone you actually just met maybe twice and don't know really well. So that was really something special to me as well, that you felt that trust to just open up. So that was really special. I've always encountered everyone just the same way. I have this principle: everyone gets the first so you meet someone for the first time, it's either good or it's crap. There's no in between. So I'm always like, you always get a second chance, because the first experience with someone is probably not the best way to meet someone. And the same for this. Like I always experience someone, like if someone comes up to me and says like, oh yeah, I am a homosexual, I believe this, I believe that, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. Do I make mistakes? Yes, I actually have a story about this, that I made a huge mistake at school a couple of years back. So it was on that famous Purple Friday,
which I just.
It's actually it's totally the other way around, and it was totally without harm in my mind, but it just sort of came out of my mouth at the moment. So we were talking to our friend Jorit at the moment, who was explaining Purple Friday and what it was. And honestly, at the first day that I met Jorit, I did not know he was gay. And I told him that. But then my weird primitive mind looked at someone else and just said literal the words like, but I had no doubt about you, to another guy. But the thing was, he was not.
Oh.
And that was a really painful situation.
Oh, ouch.
So no matter how humble you might think you are, there's always the time that you might screw up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Human brokenness. We all have it. We've all been there.
But to be fair, we went to a bar together. He hooked up with a cute blonde girl, and we made up. So
okay. He was willing to forgive you after he made that poll.
Yeah. But I did have to go on my knees and ask for forgiveness, because that is a transgression you don't really make. But yeah, so To answer your question, yeah, I really think for you especially, it's a double loaded thing because being homosexual in these times is already, well, I don't want to call it conflicting, but there's a lot of people that have a conflict with it.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily for us here in Amsterdam and in the Netherlands, it's way more open and everyone is willing to talk about it. But for you as a Christian, I feel like that must have been so, yeah, extra hard and double loaded
Mm-hmm.
because there's always the chance that people do not accept it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So hearing that made me really feel like, as someone that's not from the faith side, like how lucky it is that we can just say like, hey, I'm this, I'm that, and we don't have to, of course we still think about like, hey, maybe this person thinks this about me or thinks that about me, but it's way less than within a Christian or any other religious like faction, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
was my initial thought on that.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think it's also so true. Like for me, that also just brings so much freedom, but also so much challenge to see the world through a lens that doesn't put people in a box. So there's this, yes, there's this reality for me that my value goes into my faith, into what I've learned and acquired from Christianity, but it does not mean that I want to completely segregate myself from people who still find themselves in a gay bar, for example. Those people have a deeper meaning and a deeper identity and purpose for themselves outside their sexuality, just like I realized. So at the same time, I don't want to become narrow-minded and closed in my Christian bubble, but I also don't want to completely segregate myself from that I lose touch with my faith. So the struggle and the tension is real for sure. So I appreciate you sharing. Yeah, thanks.
I guess that leads me to a question too then, Douglas. Does it feel like you can be fully known within a Christian circle, knowing that people might have different views, or do you feel like you're always kind of having to hold something back in terms of your sexuality?
To be honest, I feel like yes, I feel like I can be known because I know now that it's not my sexuality that defines me. There's a sense of a weight being lifted off my shoulders there, and that I can be known. But yeah, I also recognize, yeah, maybe especially with like the older generation within the church, that there is this still this sense of am I going to be put into a box once they hear this part of my story. And so sometimes it can still be within my natural inclination to just not go there unless it's necessary. But then as I just shared, like being vulnerable and also sharing the darkest, hardest parts of your life is also what, yeah, I believe that's also something God calls us to do, is to bring what we struggle with and what we see as being dark and hard to control and keep hidden from others. He asks us to bring that out into the light, and with that will come freedom and fruitfulness. So I've definitely experienced that, even in the times where I've really thought, oh no, like when someone's asked me to hear my story or why I'm a Christian, it's always so much easier and feels safer to not go there. But the times where I felt that the most and I've seen it through and shared my story have actually been some of the most fruitful times, and especially with people who've become some of the closest friends as well. Through our work, especially in ministering to students and internationals. It's been really beautiful. Tumbleweed.
Yeah, there's a tumbleweed going on. I was thinking if I had a question, but I was kind of expecting to like maybe jump in on some more questions for me, maybe, or maybe Scott had some questions for you. I feel like I've heard so many different things that I kind of have so many things in my mind that just wants to go, that I want to share at the same time. Also ask.
Yeah, I mean, wait, so it feels too jumbled, or you just have?
You should... It's too jumbled.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Joey, I guess I can ask you a question, but if you get a sense of some of those things, totally send it out there. Douglas was just sharing the idea that, Douglas, you might have to remind me how you said it, but this idea of being open about our sexuality, that especially within Christianity, we're called or asked to invited to open up about the deepest parts of our struggles, our sexuality, what's going on the inside, to actually open up to those around us. And that's how community is built. That's actually like what deepens the content, the relationships, friendships. And that's like what we would call like a kingdom friendship, is that there's nothing held back. It's all out in the open in a healing way, in like a redeeming way. But I feel like sexuality usually feels like an off limits kind of thing. You might be able to hear what somebody is attracted to, but you don't have any room to speak into it, to ask them about it, or even to advise doing something differently. Does that feel really foreign to you, that there's this openness about our lives?
Do you mean towards the Christian community, like from my side to you, or in general?
Yeah, I guess I could phrase it a little bit differently. One of the things that I have experienced and love about the Christian community is that I have people I can talk to about everything. And especially within sexuality, like Douglas is not alone in that. I think every human has things that they think about, have done, want to do, has been done to them that causes shame or hiddenness, especially with sexuality. I think that's just a part of being human. It's a very taboo, intimate, and sometimes shameful area of life. And so I know that for sure for me. There's aspects of who I am as a sexual being that I wish I wasn't. But within Christianity, I have found that I can actually talk about those things. Whereas before, I felt like I had to hide those things at all costs. And so then I guess I'm curious, outside of a Christian circle, do you have that same avenue where you could talk to somebody about anything that you're thinking about, fantasizing about, struggling with?
It's a good question. My initial thought is yes, because especially when it comes to like fantasies and weird stuff and sexuality, there are certain topics that are off limit. But say for example, I'm struggling. Say for example that I might want to come out of the closet. I definitely know the one person I would go to talk about this, because I have this friend who is extremely open and is open for the conversation. But at the same time, it's not the same person that I share fantasies with. It sounds weird, like I'm talking about my sexual fantasies with friends. So when I say it's weird, no, I don't think we really talk a lot about that. It's not that it's taboo, it just doesn't really happen that much. Maybe if it's a fun, more often or not, it's a funny story. So something happens at a bar and you go home with someone and it turns out they have a penis. You hear those kind of stories.
Wow.
A friend of mine actually had this happen. So
Unexpected twist.
What was on the night?
I pulled up mine and hers was bigger. What?
No, but that would be weird.
Yeah, so it's mainly weird stories, but at the same time, with my friend, who I dearly love, she is very open to listen to most of it. But then it is more in the realm of I want kids and I like this kind of person, and but not we hold the line for sexual stuff. So I don't know how it's with you. Maybe do you have female friends that you discuss that with or not? Like for me, the line can be moved depending on the person. So your initial answer would be no, there is not really a taboo, but it just doesn't happen naturally.
Yeah, and I feel like I have to add a qualifier. It's not necessarily in the realm of like, haha, look at this cool video bowl it and like crazy 10 people. No, we don't do that. And it really is probably more within the guys sharing with guys, girls sharing with girls. There's less of, as far as I know, than Christian circles, co-ed fantasy sharing parties. That is a good way to get co-ed action parties within Christian circles, maybe. Anyway, I don't think I know what I'm saying, but I think what I'm driving at is the vulnerability, because I think it's more within the realm of struggle versus like, look at these awesome things I've found, but just more like, this is an aspect of who I am or what I've been thinking about that I don't like, and having people to go.
Yeah, I think the natural thing is that everyone struggles with certain things because there's always the fear of judgment. That fear is always there. Like, say for example, you go to a bar, you want to talk to a girl or a guy, and you want to walk up to them. There's always that initial fear of being rejected, and then if they're with friends, then what will the friends think of me when you go to that group? So that's always there. I think there's not a lot of difference, but if you go to a specific group, especially within church, because there's a lot of people that you know and see more often, I think that's again more loaded because you see those people more often, and if the judgment is there, you will encounter that judgment again and again. And for a bar, the moment you step out of the bar, the chance you see that person again is very little. Yeah, and I think that's what was in my mind initially as well, because I am a huge nerd. I watch a lot of shows and things that I normally don't talk about. I think in the same way that I don't want to be called a nerd necessarily, even though I wear that badge with honor. That's my badge of honor.
It's like you can call yourself it, but no one else can.
Well, yeah, because unless the person is specifically positive about it, because I see it as a term of endearment and not as a negative thing. But once I'm with a group of people, I do not bring up that nerdy stuff. I always hide that side because of our judgment. So in a minimalistic way, because it's not in comparison, I totally get what Douglas is saying. Like, you wanna be there, and once you do talk about it, it's an extreme relief because you can finally talk about what you're passionate about, and in your case, who you really are. But at the same time, you want to hide that because of what might people think.
Yeah, and I feel like even sometimes the vulnerability doesn't necessarily always go away. I'm just thinking for myself, even today, like this. I mean, at least I think all of my Christian friends probably heard my story before, but there's still trying to externalize what I'm processing here. I think there's still this sense of like, is it, even when I've shared my story and I've been super vulnerable and people have been really receptive and acknowledging of it, there's still this there can be, I at least feel like this sometimes, this tension of like, well, do people feel like they can even go there and ask me about it, or do they feel like they don't have to because they don't struggle with it? Yeah, I really advocate for what Scott shared, that he does have people that he can share that with. I've had that as well, I think, but it's also different because at least in the Christian world, homosexuality is such a taboo thing that for people, I can't even imagine how many people maybe do struggle with the same thing and haven't brought it out into the light, so to speak, without sounding too Christianese. So yeah, I think it's sometimes the lack of people who share the same struggle that can inhibit people even like wanting to ask about it, let alone share about it. So yeah, I think that tension is definitely there.
That's a good thought too. I think my experience is because I might have a struggle that a good amount of people either have or are talking about, and that has provided freedom, but then that might not be across the board. I really don't think it is. I think for whatever reason, it's maybe easier for maybe men to talk about sexual struggles, but maybe not as much for women. But then for sure, like within, if if it's
Yeah.
same-sex attraction or something.
I can tell you from experience, females talk about sex more than men do. Girls share everything with their girlfriends, like
That's true.
everything.
Wait,
That's
this
So-
wasn't the woman who ended up having a penis, is it?
No.
He's
I
sharing
don't-
everything.
I don't know the woman with the penis, so
Okay, just clarifying.
got to be sure. No, but it's funny. I know a friend who luckily doesn't go into details. I love that about her, but she often tells me like, yeah, girls share everything, like from the most regular normal small conversations at the bar to penis sizes. Like everything is on the table and can be talked about, but not between girl and a guy.
Mhm.
I'm very grateful for that as well.
Yeah, I had a lot to learn. Having 4 brothers does not set you up well for knowing anything about women at all.
Well, but at the same time, you're living together with your wife, so you're learning every day, and I hope learning something new every day, and
Well, yeah,
not
no.
making the same mistake every day.
There are some mistakes I repeat often, but I am also learning a lot of things. I learned pretty early on in my relationship with my now wife, although I was like 23 when I learned this, so somebody failed me, that women don't have prostate glands.
Oh, there's your
Shouldn't-
horror story of the week.
Yeah, yikes.
Oh,
This is the
man.
embarrassing story of my life. Thanks, Mr. Vetter in 5th grade, for not telling us what little body parts I have and which ones the women don't have. But Brianna had a doctor's exam, the old annual physical, and I kind of knew like, that's rough, because I know like, I don't like when the guy's just like jibbling around and looking for things, and so I was just like, I wonder what happens for yours. And so I was trying to relate. It was pretty early on when we were dating, and I was trying to figure out like what would be, because she was like, yeah, it was horrible. And I was like, okay, what do I know that's something horrible I might have to go through that she also could have gone through? So I was like, yeah, did he check your prostate? And she's like, what? It's like, I've heard it's pretty rough. Did he check your prostate? And she's like, I don't have one of those, right? And I was like, oh gosh, yeah, I knew that. What? Who said that? That was embarrassing.
Oh, man.
Valuable lesson.
You will never
Lessons learned.
you will never forget this.
Joey, you said even before we started filming again, you feel like you've got Christian morals when it comes to Christian or sexuality. What do you feel like that means?
Yeah, so Scott and I were talking about going to bars and how I relate to things. So I definitely, now that I'm older, have changed a little bit. So I'm more open to it, but especially when I was younger. So what I consider Christian morals is that I did not do one night stands for the longest time in my life. Now that I'm also very optimistic to say this. I hit the 7-year mark for being single. And that was also for me the reason that I was like, one night stands sounds interesting. Because in the beginning, I was like, oh, yeah, if you want to have sex with a girl or, go on dates and stuff, one night stands were not on the table because you need to be in love. So for me, especially was like, oh, yeah, so I have certain Christian morals that are out there.
Hmm.
Yeah. Do you think those are Christian morals necessarily, or just morals?
I think that's a good question. Yeah, I don't think I'm trying to, if I think through my own experience and the friends that I have and had, I would be more inclined to say that it is. I mean, I think it definitely is a moral that many Christians have, if not all Christians. But I don't think. I mean, there's a lot of people in the world who I haven't met. So I like to think that it's not only a Christian moral, but it is definitely a moral that I would say the general population of Christians do have. Yeah, I don't know how you would answer that question, Scott.
Yeah, it seems like not having one night stands is a byproduct of a Christian moral. about sexuality. And it's similar, Joey, to what you talked about. You wanted to not take love out of the picture within sex. And one night stands, kind of by nature, it's just a one experience thing. And then the intent is to not see that person again, or at least not to keep having sexual relations unless they move into something different, which is just like a sex buddy. And that's the reason, and then Mike, maybe feelings might, but especially one night stands, it's all the physical without the love, hypothetically. There's of course attraction. So it seems like Christians, they want to bring love and commitment into the picture with sexuality, as opposed to pulling love and commitment out. And one night stand is like the antithesis of commitment, right? It's like the one night thing. And to be honest, I think that when you bring those things all together is actually where the best sex is had, because it's not linked to performance anymore. And when performance is linked to sexuality, that's when sex can get really ugly or hurtful, because you might not perform well enough. You might not be up to par. Or it might be a power situation where one person's taking everything the other person is giving, or being forced to give, because then it's just like both people aren't fully on board with what's happening. And that's because no commitment is instituted there. And so that's where sex can get honestly scary, in my mind. Scary, hurtful. And so for me, there's a lot of freedom for performing poorly within sex and marriage, because the commitment actually is the underlying current. Whereas in one night stands, it's like, if you're not good, there ain't no way you're getting anything else.
Oh man, that totally reminds me of a story that I did hear from someone else. So there was this guy. I don't know the guy. I don't know the girl. I've heard this from a friend of mine, and this guy went to a bar and was hyping up this girl, like, "Oh, you're gonna have the best night of your life," and she was like, "Well, let's see what happens." And without any commitment, it was supposed to be a one night stand, and he just drops his pants. But yeah, he had a really small penis. But instead of like being open and being nice or whatever, this girl just starts laughing, because yeah, it's a one night stand. There's no feeling, so she doesn't really care about this guy at all. And that's the place for me where it gets scary. Like, they're not just like penis sizes besides that, but just going with someone and performing badly could lead to multiple, like, maybe psychological things for yourself. But what if she goes back to that bar and tells all her friends? Like,
Totally.
there's so much more that comes to that happens with a one night stand sometimes. I think that's initially what I thought when I was younger.
But now you're like, put me
Man,
into the game, coach.
man, I'm 20. I'm almost 27. I've been single for almost all my 20s. The coach has already said, like, let's go. You can do this. I don't know. It's not that I go to a bar with that intent. I think that's the big difference. I don't go out and be at night like, oh yeah, I definitely go out for sex. If it happens, it happens. But it's not like I go into a bar and be like, oh yeah, I'm in this bar. Let's see who's cutest. Pick her. Okay, cool. That's I'm still just dancing by myself, just having a good time.
How it should be.
Exactly.
Yeah. When sex is necessary to prove your manhood in some sort of way, that never is a good situation to prove anything. Sex should be about connecting to people, not proving. And I think that's, so I think I can get that from the Bible. It doesn't necessarily explicitly say that, but the way the Bible talks about sex is really beautiful, and talks about two people knowing each other to such an extent that they would give themselves physically. And so that implies the need for a committed relationship and a commitment for the future as well.
That's actually nice. I kind of like that.
Which part?
All of it. That no, seriously, that you don't have to prove, and that it's all just connected. That's very nice.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's not this need to keep face. That happens with one night stands. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, but I totally do get that sometimes. Like, for some reason, I also gravitate towards hanging out with girls. So this is really nice. This is the first time I'm hanging out with 3 guys online instead of there's a girl as well there. But I normally gravitate more towards girls because I'm not an alpha guy. I can be, but normally I'm just chill. I want to hang out, and I don't really want to prove myself. And what I get from the past is that normally guys are always like, "Yeah, look at me, I'm the greatest, and I did this and that," and always want to one up each other. And I'm totally the opposite of that. I'm like, yeah, whatever, man. It's all cool.
You can be the coolest. It's fine.
Yeah.
Really?
I've actually been told that one guy at school one came up to me and was like, "Yeah, you're totally the beta male in the class, right?" I'm like, "Sure, man, whatever."
Yikes.
Yeah, I mean, again, our backgrounds and our stories are different, Joey, but I definitely relate to the in terms of like you hanging out more naturally sometimes with girls as opposed to guys. Like I definitely had that experience as well, but that also I think what was different was for me that kind of bore out of the fact that so many people projected my sexuality onto me before I was kind of even comprehending whether I liked guys or girls. It kind of just became natural in the culture of where I was growing up that I would hang out with girls, because if guys wanted to hang out with me, there would always be this assumption that, oh, it's because I was attracted to them or because I, wanted something more than purely friendship. And so I feel like that's also a gift that I've received in Christian community, as I've kind of let go of the stronghold that my sexuality once had, is that I was able to more naturally and beautifully experience a connection with males on a friendship level without there being any kind of undertone of like, oh, what does this mean? Am I giving them an impression that will make them feel uncomfortable, or are they giving me an impression that makes me think that this is something else? So many undertones that can get me.
Yeah, but that's also what I really like about hanging out with Scott is even with an improv, everyone's humble. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, but you're so much better than me," and no one's one-upping each other. Everyone's pulling themselves down in a way, but at the same time complimenting each other. And Scott is the complete same way. He just wants to hang out and wants to improve what he's doing, but he doesn't really want to one-up another. He wants everyone to be at the same level and just have fun. But not just improv. With I feel like you're like that with everything.
Dang, that Scott guy sounds pretty awesome.
Said Scott.
I appreciate that, Joey, a lot. Well, we got passionate about each other.
Definitely.
Less heated, more passionate, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I feel like this actually is a good place to end.
Yes. I want to end this with the same question I asked Scott last time. If you have, Douglas, if you have one final thing you can share with the world, like tomorrow's the day you disappear, what is your final message?
Ooh, oh, wow. Okay, final message. Oh man, I've never been asked that question before. Now I feel the time crunch to come up with it.
Definitely take your time. It's a heavy loaded question. But at the same time, I feel like it can be funny if you want to. It can be serious, whatever feels natural.
I think I think at least for me in a Christian context, it can always be having lived life now as a Christian, the life that I live and the life that I've lived before without God. It's always easy for me to still even internalize this pressure that I put on myself in this kind of armor of self-condemnation in any kind of situation, whether it's feeling bad about something I did with a friend, or struggling with the current situation, like finding somewhere to live, it's always easy to put this sense of pressure on myself. And I guess if I was to give a message to someone, I mean, I'm a Christian, so it would kind of want to be passing on my faith and hope that I find in that. I would if I was to know that tomorrow is the last day of the earth, I guess I would want to encourage someone to bring whatever heavy and burdensome on their heart to God. There's so much freedom to be had in that. That would probably be my last message to encourage someone.
I like it. Really deep and great answer.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Well, Douglas, thanks again for taking time on this Friday for yet another Zoom call, an unexpected yet another Zoom call.
It was worth it. What a privilege to be your third guest on this show.
Yeah. Second, actually, because we've just been interviewing each other for a little bit too. Yeah. And Joey, thanks for your awesome questions and co-hosting with me.
Always a pleasure.
This has been a great time between two worlds, and have a great Friday.
Cheers.